So today, as we move on, we're going to be looking at some more around data collection, and more specifically, we're going to be looking at sampling techniques. There's two types of sampling techniques. Some of them are random and some of them are non-random. Today, we'll start with random sampling techniques. Make sure that you write down your definitions and make good use of the pause and rewind functions to give yourself a good chance of fully understanding exactly what we're going through with each of these different techniques. Obviously, you can go ahead and take screenshots on your phone if that will be useful. I'll start off by actually quickly defining what we mean by random. A random sample is actually one where every member of the population has the same chance of being selected to be part of the sample. We can even go further and say that every single sample combination has a chance of being chosen. Now, when I say every possible combination of sampling units has an equal chance of being chosen, that means there are no combinations that are impossible or less likely than any others. Now, this reminds me of lottery tickets, and I once saw somebody pick their numbers for the lottery and they picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I laughed to myself of what a silly combination to try and pick and think that you'll win. But actually, that combination is just as likely as any other combination. Just because they were consecutive numbers, it didn't reduce the probability that they would be a winning combination. Now, if that's the case, then we have a truly random sample. We'll start today with a simple random sample. Now, this is the most popular sampling technique and is sometimes just referred to as random sampling. The steps for this: first we need to number each of the sampling units. Once each of them have been given a number, that means that we're working with the sampling frame. We then need to pick some numbers at random, and those numbers are the ones that represent each of the individual sampling units. So I'm going to go ahead and use a random number generator. You could also use the random function on your calculator. You could use an online random number generator just like I am. And actually, there are some printed random number tables that you could make use of as well. So I've decided on a sample size of 10. So I'll go ahead and I'll pick 10 sampling units to be part of the sample. 10 unique sampling units. I'm going to go ahead and set my minimum and maximum values as 1 and 40 just to make sure that it represents only the possible values within my population. So the first random number is 15. Car number 15 is part of the sample. Car number 22 is part of the sample. And we continue to pick values to make and generate the sample. 7 is part of the sample. 12 is part of the sample. 34 is part of the sample. Every single number that we pick becomes part of the sample. But here, 34 has come up for a second time. I can't really have a car tested twice, so this 34 is ignored and we continue to pick values to be in the sample. Anytime that you get a duplicate, you have to ignore it, but make sure that you still do reach the sample size. So we still need to make sure that we get 10 values and 10 unique values. Okay, so let's continue and I'll speed up through this a little bit more. And here once again, we've got another duplicate. So 12 has already been chosen. It's come up for a second time. It can't come into the sample a second time. So I ignore that and I keep on picking. And 12 has just come up again. It's actually very likely that with a population size of 40, we will get duplicates as we try and pick our sample. This is the kind of thing that you need to mention in your exam if you're responding to an exam question asking you to describe the process of taking a simple random sample. I've given the 3 main points on the screen. Additionally, how do you deal with duplicates? If you mention the word unique, that does cater for it, but I'd like you to get in the habit of explaining what you will do with a duplicate. Any duplicates picked are ignored and we continue picking until we have a full sample. So let's just quickly go through some of the advantages and disadvantages of taking a simple random sample. So firstly, this is a sample that's likely to be bias free. It's minimized any bias that we might encounter from taking a sample. It's not too expensive, there's not too much number crunching that you need to do, you don't need to categorize each of the members of the population, each of the sampling units, so it's relatively easy and cheap. And we can specify the actual probability of each of the members of the population being selected. So we know the exact probability that each sampling unit is selected to be part of the sample. So some disadvantages that you can quote are that we actually have to have a sampling frame to be able to undergo simple random sampling. We have to have that list, that register, that database for us to pick our sampling units from. And because of that, this isn't very suitable if we know or we're working with a population whose size is actually quite large. Okay, so let's actually just dive into an example here. We've been told that there's 100 members of a yacht club and they're listed alphabetically in the club's membership book. Okay, so that sounds like a sampling frame to me. It's a register or a list that contains all of the members of the club. The committee wants to select a sample of 12 members and they want them to fill in a questionnaire. So we need to explain how the committee could use a calculator or a random number generator to take a simple random sample of their members. Alright, so we're going to start off, or the club will start off by assigning each member of the yacht club a unique identifying number, and we should specify the actual numbers, so from 1 to 100. Every member gets a number that's associated with just them. After we've issued those unique numbers, we're going to go ahead and use the calculator's random numbered function or a random number generator on a computer online, and we're going to pick 12 unique numbers between 1 and 100. So we don't want any repeats, we want these numbers to be unique. Okay, now any duplicate numbers we just ignore and we keep on going until we have 12 unique numbers. Okay, so now each yacht club member that corresponds to a number that was picked will be part of the sample. So those 12 individual yacht club members are now the sample. Okay, so in part B of the question, we're asked to talk about how a lottery sample is going to be picked. So this is still a simple random sample, but we don't actually need to have any numbering involved. What we do instead is that we're going to write the names of each of the members of the club on an identical piece of paper or card, and then we're going to put them into a hat or any other receptacle, a hat, a bucket, a bag, whatever you want. We're then going to shake them up, and that's our randomization process. So we don't need a random number generator, and we didn't assign them random numbers, but we get the same effect. Once we randomize them by shaking them up, we're then going to pick separately 12 individual pieces of paper, which should represent 12 different members of the yacht club. Be careful that we're not putting the paper back into the hat. We're taking it out, and that person's been chosen. They only get chosen once. There's no opportunity to be chosen twice. That's put to the side, and then we go ahead to pick the next number. Once again, the 12 pieces of paper that come out, they represent the 12 members who are now part of the sample. Okay, and we're just about finished, but before you move on to some practice questions, let's take a quick look at the specification and exactly what it is that students are expected to be able to show, exactly what the examiners are anticipating you will be confident on. While you read through that, I want to quickly remind you that it will be sensible for you to come back and watch this video at a later date, maybe come back in 2 or 3 weeks or before an assessment. And as you watch through the second time round, because you've done your practice, a lot of what you go through here should resonate with you much more. And you have a chance to really embed your understanding of the difficult concepts, the ones that have been flagged up as A star.